The July 29th meeting of the Monroe County Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Alcoffer. Mr. Ansello. Here. Mr. Baroff. Here. Ms. Boyce. Here. Mr. Brew. Here. President Carbone.
Here.
Mr. Delahanty. Here. Mrs. DeFlorio. Here. Mrs. Draw. Here. Mr. Felder. Mr. Flagler Mitchell. Here. Ms. Halstead. Mr. Hebert. Here. Mr. Howland. Here. Ms. Cayley. Here. Ms. Lamar. Here. Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Mafucci. Here. Mr. Marionetti. Here. Mr. Michikay is excused. Mr. Morelli. Here. Mr. Moyo. Here. Mr. Rockow. Here. Mr. Shepard. Here. Ms. Taylor. Here. Mr. Turp. Mr. Wilcox is excused. Mr. Wilt. Here. Mr. Zale. Here.
Please stay seated. I'd like to introduce Pastor Eric Helms of Brockport United Methodist Church, who has been invited by legislator Mike Rockow to lead us in a moment of prayer.
Let us pray. God of creation, in your creating work, you bring order out of chaos. Pour out your wisdom on this governing body as we seek to bring an order to our community that reflects your righteousness, your peace, and your justice. Amen.
Please stand as Legislator Carla Boyce will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Legislator Boyce.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Your copy of the Journal of Day 6, June 11th, 2019 is available on your tablet. Without exception, the journal will stand approved as submitted. There's a hearing loop in place tonight to assist those who are hearing impaired. Anyone requiring assistance should inquire in the clerk's office.
If you have a cellular phone, pager, or other electronic device in your possession, I would request that you make it inaudible for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Legislators, the referrals submitted to the legislature for the next committee cycle are available on your tablet as well as online. There are several proclamations scheduled this evening. Mr. Clerk.
Will Donna Mancuso please come forward? Also, President Dr. Joe Carbone, County Executive Cheryl Donalfo, Legislator Mike Zale, and Legislator Mike Rockow. Whereas public libraries have played an instrumental role in maintaining our quality of life in Monroe County, providing invaluable resources and skills to residents that enrich our community, promote the accessibility of literacy and knowledge as a whole. And whereas the Monroe County Library System is privileged to have many top libraries that provide invaluable informational, educational, and recreational services to all who visit. The Seymour Library that serves the towns of Clarkson and Sweden is a shining jewel in our second-to-none Monroe County Library System. And whereas Seymour Library is a true community hub with limitless opportunities for residents of all ages to learn, build relationships, and so much more. As our world has become increasingly technological, requiring individuals to learn new skills to be successful in daily life, Seymour Library has adapted and expanded its resources and personnel to maintain its critical role to benefit residents in our community. And whereas the Rochester Regional Library Council recognizes one academic library, one public library, and one school library each year for its excellence. The choice for the 2019 RRLC Public Library of the Year is Seymour Library for its collection, equipment, and most of all, helpful and welcoming staff. It is the library staff especially that makes Seymour Library so deserving of the Rochester Regional Library Council's award. Now therefore we, Cheryl Donalfo, Monroe County Executive, Dr. Joe Carbone, President, Mike Rockow, Legislator, District 2, and Mike Zale, Legislator, District 20, on behalf of the residents of Monroe County, do hereby recognize and congratulate Seymour Library for winning the 2019 RRLC Public Library of the Year Award.
So I just want to thank everybody of this legislative body for this proclamation. We very much appreciate it. Our library wouldn't be anything without the patrons who visit the library each day. All that we do is for them and for the community to strengthen it and help build as the proclamation mentioned, a hub for our communities. There are so many individuals that come into our libraries, not just Seymour, but across the county, that utilize a variety of the services that we offer, from job assistance to our literacy to even some of our STEM programs that we offer. So if you haven't had the opportunity to visit your local public library, I highly recommend you do so. There's so much that we offer for the community that that you can take advantage of there. Thank you.
Janice Buechner-Schertz and representatives from the Retired Public Employees Association, please come forward. Also, President Dr. Joe Carbone, County Executive Cheryl Donalfo, and Legislator Frank Alcoffer. Whereas, founded in 1969, the Retired Public Employees Association is a powerful supporter of current and future public service retirees. Serving as a not-for-profit entity, they have approximately 600 members in Rochester, including retirees and pre-retirees of New York State and local governments, school districts, public authorities, and their spouses. And whereas, for the past 50 years, the Retired Public Employees Association has been solely dedicated to protecting and promoting the benefits of retired public employees. They have seen many success through advocacy for their members, including a permanent cost of living adjustment, as well as the protection of health insurance benefits and retirement fund assets. And whereas out of the entirety of the Retired Public Employees Association, nearly 80% reside in New York State. Those 470,000 state and local retirees are responsible for $12 billion in economic activity, thereby helping to support 73,000 jobs. And whereas the Retired Public Employees Association is responsible for countless acts of advocacy and support for committed public service employees. We congratulate the Retired Public Employees Association on its 50th anniversary and wish their members continued success and momentum in the decades to come. Now, therefore, we, Cheryl Donalfo, County Executive, Dr. Joe Carbone, President, and Frank Alcoffer, Legislator, District 4, on behalf of the residents of Monroe County, do hereby recognize and congratulate the Retired Public Employees Association on its 50th anniversary and for their unbounding service to our Monroe County community.
Out here. Well, hello, I am Jan Buechner-Schertz, and these two wonderful women with me are Diane Grillo and Rusty Smith, and they are on our steering committee here in Rochester. And on behalf of the Genesee Valley chapter of the Rochester Retired Public Employees Association, we are honored to accept this proclamation and thank you for your recognition and support of public employees. And as our speaker explained, our PEA began 50 years ago by a handful of retired state employees who realized that there was no one advocating for them. Once you retire from public employment and you're no longer a member of your union, you don't have anybody fighting for you, speaking up for you. And so that's how the organization began, and it's grown over all these years. There's chapters all over New York, the Carolinas, and Florida. And so we want to thank you for your continued support of public employees at all levels of government, county, state, municipal, and for all those hardworking individuals out there, and especially our law enforcement people. Thank you.
Will Coach Donovan Lopez and members of the Pittsburgh Panthers girls lacrosse team please come forward? Also, President Dr. Joe Carbone, Legislator Howard Mafucci, Legislator Carla Boyce, and Legislator John Howland. Whereas it is the sense of this legislature to honor and celebrate achievement across Monroe County, and whereas attendant to such a concern and in full accord with longstanding tradition, these legislators are justly proud to honor the Pittsburgh Panthers girls lacrosse team. And whereas head coach Donovan Lopez led the Panthers to another Section 5 Class A title, marking their 7th championship in the past 10 years. This year's team knocked off top-seeded Rush Henrietta in a grinding quadruple overtime game to claim the title and a spot in the state tournament. And whereas in the state tournament, captains Ellie Mooney and Nora Anderson and Anya Lucy and the rest of the Panthers traveled west to orchestrate a 19-7 blowout win over Lancaster before falling to eventual champion Northport in the semifinal. And whereas, as important as their success on the field is, these young women also continue the Pittsburgh tradition of excelling in the classroom and displaying positive leadership in the community. They were named a New York State Public High School Athletic Association Scholar Athlete team by maintaining a 94 average. Now, therefore, let it be known that we, Dr. Joe Carbone, President, Howard Mafucci, Legislator District 10, Carla Boyce, Legislator District 5, and John Holland, Legislator District 13, do hereby honor the Pittsburgh Panthers girls lacrosse team on this 9th day of July, 2019.
Hi, I'm Nora Anderson, one of the captains of this team, and we are very honored to accept the recognition for our success this season, which was very unexpected for us. We started off with a very young team, and we did not expect to get very far, but we worked very hard every day and got to where we were, I'm very impressed by everyone here. I'm very honored to be a part of this team, so thank you very much for your recognition.
We will now recess for the purpose of holding a public hearing. I now declare open the public hearing entitled Adoption of 2020-2025 Capital Improvement Program.
There are no speakers registered for this hearing.
There being none, I declare this public hearing closed. I will now reconvene the July 9th, 2019 meeting of the Monroe County Legislature. There are no formal committee reports scheduled for this evening. We will now hold the public forum. We have several people registered to address the legislature. Mr. Clerk.
If you require assistance, a deputy is available to assist you in approaching the lectern. I will call 3 people forward at one time. Each speaker will have 2 minutes in which to address the legislature, and kindly conclude your remarks when the timer sounds and exit through the rear of the chambers. Thank you for your cooperation. Our first 3 speakers are Richard Cherkis, Cheryl Frank, and Chris Ferrari.
County executives and honorable members of the legislature, good evening. My name is Dr. Richard Cherkis, and I don't know if you remember from my last talk a month ago, I'm a retired obstetrician gynecologist. Who would have thought that cats in New York State have more rights and sympathy than the unborn fetus? Recently, the New York State Legislature passed a law stating that it's inhumane to declaw a cat. At about the same time, they also passed the Reproductive Health Act and essentially declared that the unborn fetus has no rights or privileges, and it is acceptable and permissible to terminate a fetus's life at almost any point in the pregnancy. Let me explain to you one of these acceptable termination procedures that is performed in the second trimester called a D&E, dilation and evacuation. The cervix is the door to the uterus. It needs to be dilated or opened so that the fetus can be removed. The cervix is dilated to about 4 to 5 centimeters. The fetus at this point in the pregnancy is about as big as the palm of my hand. There's a problem here. The intact fetus cannot fit through that opening. So the fetus needs to be dismembered. The arms and legs are evulsed from the body and brought out through the cervix. The body is torn in pieces and removed, and the head of the fetus needs to be crushed so it can fit out through the cervix. Now that procedure is not only inhumane, it is downright barbaric. And there's something wrong in Albany when they think it's inhumane to declaw a cat, but you can rip apart and crush a fetus. I'm asking this legislative body to propose a resolution to repeal the Reproductive Health Act and give a clear message to the governor and Albany that there are people who believe the Reproductive Health Act is morally wrong. Thank you.
My name is Cheryl Frank. I'm here representing Color Bright and Green and the Rochester Area Interfaith Climate Action. We support the Rochester Youth Climate Leaders in asking Monroe County to please create a Climate Action Plan Advisory Board. The students are doing lots of research, giving us a lot of good information, but they are not legislators. It's up to you all to please create an advisory board to find best practices in creating a climate action plan for Monroe County. We want to encourage you to look at the climate action plans of the city of Rochester, Erie County, Suffolk County, and Portland, Oregon. Let's not let the issue of global warming go to the back burner. While possibly less visible than other issues, climate change has the potential to exacerbate other issues, such as health, refugees, agriculture, and poverty. And let's show our neighbors that global warming is not a partisan issue, but that members of all parties can work together to solve it. One of the main drivers of climate change is food waste. When organic matter gets put in a landfill, it does not decompose, but it creates methane gas, which is 20 times more warming than carbon dioxide. So please expand county-wide composting and redistribution of surplus food from residential and commercial sources to food cupboards, pig farmers, and both urban, garden, and rural agricultural enterprises. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Chris Ferrari. I'm 17, and I'm a 2019 graduate from Spencerport. I'm here today to take a stand against Governor Cuomo and our one-party state. To say that the most recent state budget was atrocious would be an understatement. In New York, we spend more than twice as much per capita as Florida, and state and local governments in New York City are spending more than $13,000 a person annually. According to the National Review, the state projected a $2.3 billion decrease in income tax revenue, but King Cuomo raised spending by $7.5 billion. Well, how does that work? Not only is the state losing money, but they're spending more. The governor had the audacity to call the budget, quote, a budget with real fiscal integrity, end quote. The last time I checked the basics of finances, you don't spend more money when you're losing it. He put an additional $1 billion into public schools, which are already the most lavishly funded in the nation. I'm not completely against this, but I do know that this increase could have gone to many other causes. For example, let's take $250,000 of that $1 billion and give it to the Veterans Outreach Center, whose funding was cut by our state by $250,000 in this year's budget, in which I plead with many of you to donate in order to help them fill the gap left by the state. The new budget also secured $100 million to publicly finance campaigns, which is not how America works. If you want to donate to a campaign, you did. If you didn't, no one forced you to. Not only that, the state assembly and senators will see an increase from $79,500 to $110,000 in January to $130,000 in 2021. Now, what have New York State Democrat representatives done to deserve a $50,500 pay raise? I say Democrats because no Republican voted for the raise. Governor Cuomo also gave himself a raise. He will go from $200,000 to $250,000 in 2021. The governor is already worth millions, and if he was really worried about the rich getting richer, he would have taken a pay cut. But we must remember the governor does what is best for him. The budget also imposed a sales tax for online purchases, which most of its proceeds go into the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. So citizens in Monroe County must pay a new tax without receiving the benefits. This governor approved free college for illegals, then denied the same for Gold Star families before approving it a few days later reluctantly. He has stepped on the lives of many upstate citizens, spit and stomped on the lives of the unborn, and put himself before the people he serves. So while the governor thinks people are leaving New York because of the weather, we know the real reasons. I will leave you all with this thought. A governor who takes an oath in which he swears to support the Constitution of the United States, he believes America, which has preserved the flag of liberty for centuries, was never that great. Thank you.
Our next three speakers are Liam Smith, Marla Parsons, and Linda Fideli.
Good evening. My name is Liam Smith, and I'm a rising senior at Brighton High School. I'm here today to express my support for establishing a Climate Action Plan Advisory Board. The Rochester Youth Climate Leaders have spoken here during the last few months, and we plan to speak here in the months to come. Our end goal is for Monroe County to establish a Climate Action Plan, which would drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions throughout the county. Such a plan would mitigate the social and financial implications of climate change while spurring local economic development in the renewable energy sector. However, before we can establish a climate action plan, we need to lay its foundation. That foundation would be the creation of a Climate Action Plan Advisory Board, a group of local businesses and environmental leaders that would advise the legislature on how best to implement an effective plan. These experts would know exactly how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions while simultaneously growing our local economy. And they would be able to answer the really specific questions that RYCL, as a youth organization, doesn't always have the answers to. As you may know, Legislator Wilcox and Legislator Morelli Jr. have announced their intention to release language that would create such an advisory board. I encourage all of you to support the proposal when the time comes. In the meantime, if you are interested in learning more about the Rochester Youth Climate Leaders, and what we are asking the county to do, please reach out to us. We're happy to speak with anyone and everyone, and we hope to work across partisan lines to protect our county from a changing climate. We will also be reaching out to many, if not all of you this summer in hopes of meeting with you individually. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Marla Parsons, and I'd like to speak with you about Margaret Sanger and the founder of Planned Parenthood. One of Sanger's first published writings was in 1915, What Every Boy and Girl Should Know. In the afterword, Sanger states, "It is a vicious cycle. Ignorance breeds poverty, and poverty breeds ignorance. There is only one cure for both, and that is to stop breeding these things. Stop bringing to birth children whose inheritance cannot be one of health or intelligence. Stop bringing in the world children whose parents cannot provide for them. Sanger wrote about eugenics in the Birth Control Review, a magazine which she founded in 1917. Eugenics is defined as the science of improving a human population by controlled breeding. She published numerous articles such as Birth Control and Positive Eugenics in 1925, Birth Control, the True Eugenics in 1928, and so on. It simply cannot be denied that Margaret Sanger was a supporter of eugenics. Sanger had been criticized for writing about wanting to sterilize those she designated as unfit, which she said would be the salvation of American civilization. It is obvious that the class of people she referred to as unfit was that of the lower class, which certainly included the African American community. Quoting Reverend Clenard H. Childress, Jr., founder of blackgenocide.org, he says, "Abortion does violence to women and their children, both physically and emotionally. The leading cause of death in the African American community is abortion, and the leading provider of abortion is Planned Parenthood. All the sociological data proves Planned Parenthood has deliberately chosen the Black American community to be its preferred clients." Quoting Candace Owens of Prager University, she says Planned Parenthood has been tremendously successful in the path they set out on. They have successfully trained us blacks to exterminate ourselves. With black women representing only 6% of the population, yet represent almost 40% of all abortions in the U.S. 900 black babies are aborted every day and over 18 million since 1973. Our population growth has stagnated. More black babies are aborted than born alive in cities like New York, end quote. According to the Vital Statistics 2012 by the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, 42.4% of babies aborted in New York City were African American. The Hispanic community represented 31%. Together, African American and Hispanic Latinos represented 73% of aborted babies. A total of 54,245 babies were aborted from the minority community that year alone. Quoting Alveda King, niece of the late Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., "Doctors who insist on continuing to abort little people in the womb will have to answer because the doctors themselves medically know that that is a person. Ultrasound shows that all of us now, and the science has caught up with us. In most instances, mothers have been either coerced, sometimes even in the case of rape or incest, and are forced into abortions, or at least confused and under stress and pressure. Alabama and Georgia's new abortion law is not to punish women, but it is to stop and give the baby civil rights," end quote. Who knows if Margaret Sanger envisioned Planned Parenthood become the biggest abortion provider in the U.S., yet that is certainly what it has become. And as Reverend Childress, Jr. has also stated, the most dangerous place for an African American is in the womb. Do you agree? If you represent one of these African American communities, I ask you if black babies' lives matter. I'm here because they do matter, and so do babies of every color. Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Please pass a resolution urging the repeal of provisions of New York's Reproductive Health Act, as Putnam County has already done. Send this resolution to the New York State Assembly and ask them to pass it, and Governor Cuomo to sign it into law." Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'm Linda Isaacson Fideli, and I'm concerned about climate change. It's common to hear that people are concerned about climate change for their children and grandchildren. Well, I'm concerned for myself and my contemporaries because we're already seeing the effects of the crisis, even here in Rochester. The recent floods on the shores of Lake Ontario are just the most current and obvious example. Given my concern, when I recently met the Rochester youth climate leaders, high school students who have every reason to fear for their future, I had to support them and all of the youth that they represent. The students are asking the county to establish a climate action plan. That doesn't sound extreme or unreasonable. It's a simple ask to assess the sources and levels of greenhouse gases under your jurisdiction and to take action to reduce them. The City of Rochester is taking action. They've done their research, sought input from stakeholders, and have developed a climate action plan that they are now working to implement. I know that the county is doing some very good work under the umbrella of sustainability, but it's not nearly enough, and you won't even talk about climate change. In fact, I heard last year from a personal friend who used to volunteer at the county zoo that staff and volunteers were told not to use the words climate change in their work with the public. Please do a turnaround on this issue. Follow the good examples that many of our local towns, the city, and our state are setting. Commit to greenhouse gas reductions for everyone in our county who's currently feeling the effects of climate change, and of course, to make possible a safe future for our young people. These young people clearly take seriously their responsibility to work towards the world that they need and deserve. It is your duty to consider their input and their lives just as seriously, and to do what's best for them, your constituents. Address climate change, starting with what's frankly a very measured baby step, a climate action plan.
Our next three speakers are Robin Whittington, Emily Pavone, and Grace Miller.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Robin Whittington, and I'm here today to speak out against the Reproductive Health Care Act. The law that is currently written is vague and allows for abortions of a fully formed human being. Furthermore, the term health is not adequately or accurately defined. It removes protection for wanted babies and the male counterparts who created them. If a mother were to deem her pregnancy a risk to her mental health, financial health, or even emotional well-being, an abortion can now take place under this new law. Late-term abortions are inhumane. The mother still has to deliver this child in its lifeless state. The law allows for abortion from 1 week to birth. In my opinion, this is infanticide. Section 1 of the 14th Amendment states, a state can't deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Given that there's a heartbeat less than a month after conception, fingerprints at 10 weeks, and the ability to feel pain around 20 weeks or even earlier, it seems odd that we don't recognize personhood until birth. Perhaps we just need further clarification on the definition of life. An IVF specialist would most likely define life at the moment they achieve fertilization in a lab. We use the term fetus as if it were an inanimate object without life. I propose it is merely a word in which defines the age of that life, the life of a human being. In the womb, we call that life a fetus. Once the fetus exits the womb, we call it a baby. By age 2, we call it a toddler. As the child grows, it'll have many names over the course of its life: teenager, young adult, adult, senior citizen, elderly, and so on. A fetus is still a life, just at a different stage of their development. In the womb, it is growing, living, life. If it were not alive, then why would we need an abortion in the first place? The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention began abortion surveillance reports in 1969. Between 1970 and 2015, the CDC reported nearly 45.7 million legal induced abortions, and those were just the reported ones. As our representatives, hear these words and be their voice. Regardless of your political persuasion, take charge of the narrative you create every day and protect the weak and the vulnerable children of tomorrow, even when it isn't easy to do so. You're the regulators of our communities and can make an impact. Use your leadership responsibility to recognize the senseless infanticides of millions of children. Take ownership and shape a better tomorrow. Lives are depending on you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Pavone and I am an early intervention special education teacher with Monroe County. I've been an early intervention teacher for 24 years and I have been serving as an independent provider for the last 16 years with the county. Some of you have probably been here before and have heard our plea. As independent providers, we pay all of our own overhead. We pay money for all of the hours above and beyond work, which can be up to 25 hours after the workday. Most of us have lunch in our car, breakfast in our car. I know I do 5 to 6 visits with these babies 5 days a week. As an educator, I've had significant training in working with children with autism, with Down syndrome. I'm a behavior specialist on top of this. There's evidence that provides proving the effectiveness of early intervention. I'm here to just talk tonight about the fact that we have had no raise in 15 years in early intervention, and we've also had 2 pay cuts. I'm not sure who else goes through jobs like that. There has recently been a raise in early intervention, a mere 5% raise for speech therapists, occupational therapists, and physical therapists, but none for teachers. Not sure why. We haven't really been given a clear answer, but I see as many kids as all of those disciplines. There is also a huge wait list right now, which has been addressed numerous times, for all of these little babies, and that is unbelievably sad in my eyes. There not only is a wait list now for all of the therapies, but there's also a wait list for supplemental evals, which is how children get into the program. Early intervention is a stepping stone for preschool. It's a stepping stone for school age. It gets these kids the services they need. Many of them come right out of the hospital requiring these services. I would not be doing this job if it weren't for my love of this job for the families. These families devote their time. Many families give up work hours to be there. We are in their homes. We are on top of them days and days and days a week. I, for one, have to take over a lot of the waiting list because I have had such significant training. So I'm asked to put on a hat of an occupational therapist or a speech therapist or a physical therapist. And I need to do my best to do that for these families. Special ed teachers, teachers of the deaf, and teachers of the visually impaired deserve that raise as well. Thank you, and let's keep these services for these babies.
I was appalled the other night to pick up the newspaper and find out that the Republican leadership under Cheryl Denalfo is suing the state over the green light law, allowing undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's license. The way we treat our immigrants. The United States is made up of immigrants. Our ancestors came from other countries in the world. We're an immigrant land, and the way we're treating the immigrants that come into our country is deplorable. I'm Italian. My grandfather, when he landed at Ellis Island, walked from Ellis, New York to Corning, New York, which is only about 100 miles from here. He walked along the railroad track. He wanted to get a job at the railroad. My grandfather, whose name was Mietolo, had to change his name to get a job because he couldn't identify himself as an Italian. And I feel this because my real name is Grazia Maria Mietolo. But I can't go by that name because my grandfather was forced to change his name to get a job. This is appalling, and I feel it. So you can imagine how our immigrants feel when this Republican body says, no, you cannot get the driver's license because you're an immigrant. It's shameful. And I come across here very strong because not only are the immigrants treated that way, but our poor. We've tried to get a meeting to talk about the sanctions. We still, in January, here it is July, we still don't have that meeting to talk about the sanctions that oppress our poor and cause homelessness in our city and our county. How much do you care about our poor and our people who are suffering? It's abysmal. It's your responsibility to make sure this land, the American land, is for all people, not certain people, not wealthy people, not people of a certain color or race. But this land should be for all people. And you have an obligation to treat all our people, poor, from other lands, no matter who they are, equally. We are all God's children.
Our next 3 speakers are Gina Prince, Mrs. Morales, and Larry Marks.
Good evening. My name is Gina Prince, and I'm here on behalf of my son Gavin to share our positive experience with early intervention program and to ask that you consider wage increases for the program and the special education teachers. At 18 months, Gavin's pediatrician recommended we contact early intervention due to his developmental delays. Gavin was not speaking, and his constant sensory-seeking behavior made it very difficult for him to focus on activities and to communicate with us. He was banging his head and crashing into furniture when frustrated or feeling challenged by a task. Gavin is now 2 and is currently receiving services from a special education teacher, Emily, and an occupational therapist, Rosie, once a week in our home. Each week they have different toys and games picked out for his sessions to help him learn. Our providers have taught Gavin how to sit and focus on tasks and activities, which have also helped develop his speech. They taught us many ways to manage his sensory-seeking behavior. For example, using joint compressions and swinging to help calm and ready him to learn a new task. Their experience and dedication to our son's development has been invaluable. With the continued help of our family and service providers, our son's development is thriving. Presently, Gavin can name every animal in the zoo, sing songs, and identify colors and shapes. He has an amazing head start for school because of this program. He is a happy little boy who enjoys learning. We have every reason to believe that Gavin's accomplishments will continue into adulthood. My family and I are very grateful for the program. Thank you.
Good evening. I would like to speak about the trust you need to know, and this is for Monroe County and the people of Rochester. Gentrification at its deepest level is really about reorganizing the purpose of the city from being spaces that provide for the poor and middle class and towards being spaces that generate capital for the rich. The trend isn't limited to cities. For decades, conservation in the United States government has been working to deregulate industries and defund safety nets to turn the United States from a welfare state based on the vision of John Maynard Keynes, the early 20th century economist who believed that the robot government was necessary to emulate the inheritance and stability of inequals of capitalism into neoliberal corporate friendly, I think this is I can't pronounce that word right, into neoliberal capital friendly, concerned only with increasing the share of wealth owned by upper class. A professor of planning geographics at the University of Toronto states, gentrification is much more than the physical revocation of residential and commercial spaces. It marks the replacement of the public regarded inner city with physical and institutional limits of the system designed to the equality of capitalism with the privileged, regulated, neoliberalist spaces of inclusion. In other words, gentrification is the urban form of a new kind of capitalism. It becomes clear the effects of gentrification, coffee shops, hipsters, and the subsequent articles profiling them. The financial problems are no accident, but the predictable effects of turning cities into spaces that benefit no one but those who control capital. They privatize schools and housings, busted unions, and give tax breaks to other insensitive, to any who would bring money to the city with few strings attached to the investment. Most importantly, They did everything they can to ensure the poor, the blacks, will not come back. To understand how politicians and developments are trying to change, it's important to understand that the city has nearly always been actively hostile towards its black and poor population. Real estate developers, mayors, millionaires, politicians, and conservationists began the campaign to convince U.S. residents and others that they're being in disguise to what is really going on. The city rebuilding, wanting to do it in a complete different way, demolishing us. The way we've been living hurts for more than one reason we're aware of, so that we should start laying the ground down and standing for what we're going to go for.
Please summarize. Thank you.
I did.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Larry Marks. I'm CEO of the Children's Agenda, and we're here to say thank you to the county executive and the administration for lowering the copay for parents for child care. In support of the thousands of Monroe County families who struggle every day with simultaneously doing what's right for their kid and doing what's right for their employer, this is a really important step in the right direction for affordable and quality child care. Reducing the county's copay to 25% instead of the maximum allowed under law of 35% above poverty is an important step. We've been urging that for a while, and particularly a year ago in response to the county's submitted 5-year child and family services plan, and are just really grateful to see that this is happening. We posted a blog showing that identical families living in the Calmum School District, one family in Monroe County, another family in Livingston. In Monroe, you'd pay $3,475 more for child care, leading to a very, very different kind of decision than you would in Livingston County, where it's a 10% copay. So higher parent copays defeat the whole purpose of assisting low-income families with child care, which is to help them stay in the workforce and get out of poverty. Some families eligible for assistance decline because they can't afford the copay and choose to either leave the workforce entirely or place their children in less expensive, potentially substandard and unsafe care. We hope the county will continue to build on this important step in the right direction and reduce parent copays further, but first things first, and now is the time for thank you. And also, how can we help? These support initiatives either succeed or flounder on the basis of how well people are informed about the availability of that kind of support, particularly those who are affected by it. And we hope the county will promote and market this. We'd be glad to support that effort to all eligible families. And I just want to mention that the next step is to go on to fixing the broken child care system. And as we know, that is a question of both how we spend our economic development dollars and also New York State policy. So as having the pleasure, I guess, of serving as co-chair of the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council work group on child care, we're going to be issuing recommendations this September. I'm also appointed to the governor's New York State Child Care Availability Task Force, which doesn't have to make recommendations to 2020, but we will in September make some early recommendations, and we'd like to partner with the county on changing state policy and economic development funding. So once again, we're just here to say thank you about this wonderful step in the right direction to make child care more affordable to more low-income working families. Thanks.
Our next three speakers are Leah Glanville, Tyrone Hotch, and Rita Lewis.
Good evening. The previous speakers did a good job on speaking of the children, the babies, the declawing of cats. And the problem is the New York State Veterinary Medical Society argued that declawing should be allowed, especially when the alternative for these poor cats is abandonment or euthanasia. But Assemblyman sponsor Linda Rosenthal stated it's unnecessary, it's painful, and causes the cats problems, and it's just brutal. However, we've gone over that. I'd like to put in that the Reproductive Health Act also erases the state's recognition of preborn babies as potential homicide victims, even third trimester babies. It removes abortion from the penal code entirely and allows licensed health practitioners, even some PAs, nurse practitioners, and licensed midwives to commit abortions. The RHA allows for an abortion right up to the moment of birth for any reason, even for emotional reasons. Women should have the opportunity to know the truth about their unborn baby's humanity as part of informed consent before abortions. And the rest of us should learn the same truth about what happens during an abortion before we support legalized abortion. I challenge you to view what truly happens in an abortion before supporting such laws. We have fallen so low as a nation. Everything is so politically correct, with everyone being offended at the drop of a hat, that people are afraid to make statements and stand up for truth. Instead, society wants us to believe there is no more right or wrong and anything goes. They're trying to remove the guilt of their actions, but making laws such as allowing abortion will not remove the guilt from their souls. This is not a political issue, it's a moral issue. The cat declaw bill claims it's unnecessary, painful, and likened to mutilation. What about all the barbaric methods used on unborn children without pain medications, who have their bodies torn apart, heads punctured, skulls to be pulled out of its mother's womb? Make no mistake about it, access to abortion does nothing to advance women's rights. Rather, it invites both women and men to view their own unborn children as disposable objects. We live in the 21st century, and we think we've come so far, but the society and current political system have chosen to fight for the pain of declawing a cat over the pain, murder, and barbaric acts upon our future generation of children. The only ones who can do anything about this or give a voice to the unborn is you, sitting here. For such a time as this, you are here. You will be held accountable. I urge you, no, I plead with you, be men and women of courage, honor, and integrity. Fight for those who have no one to fight for them. Please, no longer make this along party lines or political agendas, but make yourself knowledgeable about this issue and stand up for those who need you the most. If you are unwilling to repeal the Reproductive Health Act, then God have mercy on us. For what kind of civilization have we become when we choose to make laws for a declaw of a cat, fining the veterinarians $1,000, and remove all protective laws for the protection of life of an unborn child? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tyrone Hodge. I'm a member of the Rochester Homeless Union in close association with the House of Mercy, Sister Grace, Sister Rita, and CW. There was a bill passed that allows undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licensing, but it seems that executive county leaders are opposed to the process, and at least these individuals will be insured while they're driving and not be afraid to be on the streets to provide for their families. I also wanted to read some quotes here from a book, To Kill in a City, written by Peter Moskowitz, and it's involving gentrification in our city. What's happening in San Francisco is not an abnormality, but simply one of the most extreme examples of what's happening in nearly every city in the United States. President Ronald Reagan cuts taxes on the rich from around 70% to about 30%, and along with cuts to spending on housing and transportation at the federal level. That forces cities to figure out how to fund themselves. As we saw in Detroit and New Orleans, that means cities are now trying to attract as many rich people as they can in order to feed their budget for infrastructure, education, pensions, and everything else. And because cities must borrow heavily to do these things, they are beholden to rating agencies such as Standards and Poor's, which determine whether a city is financially healthy enough to take on loans or too risky in an investment. But gentrification today goes beyond an accounting trick. It's become a theory of governance that places the needs of capital over people. One could argue that a poor city such as Detroit might need gentrification to fill its budget's gaps. But what about San Francisco? The city doesn't need to keep attracting rich people. It was not in the economic crisis before the tech wave crashed on its shores. The city's budget was already relatively balanced before the tech boom. Yet, city's administration keeps zoning for more condos and more high-rise office buildings, sound like something here, and handing out tax breaks to companies. Its mayor keep courting the big tech players at conferences and in corporate boardrooms, as if San Francisco was desperate for their monies. Even though the city is expected, at least by one estimate, to have $10 billion budget surplus by 2017, this is the city as growth machine. By now, we come to expect the economic growth at all costs. Governors, more industries and business in America, for finance to oil to real estate, and we've seen what happens when those sectors are left with little or no regulations. And I want to end this here with, we need more regulations of what happens in our cities, as developers will come here and develop, and we need more regulations. Thank you.
I'm speaking about the leadership here, led by Cheryl Denolfo, to sue the state over the state's initiative to provide driver's license to all people, regardless of where they were born. This is only the fair and right thing to do, to provide them with the right to drive safely and legally. I don't know why you feel it's your duty to take that right away from people who simply want to live and work and provide for their families the way you do. They came from very difficult situations. That is why they left their countries. That's why they made the treacherous journey. And now you want to add more hardship onto what they've already experienced by taking away their right to drive legally. It's just not right. It really isn't right. And I don't know how you can sleep at night knowing that you're depriving people of something that is necessary for them. It just isn't right. You really need to think about what you're doing. Let's provide help for people. Let's provide assistance so that everyone can live the way God intended, with fairness and equality and justice and an opportunity to raise their families in a safe way. That's the only right thing to do. Thank you.
Our next two speakers are Aisha Qatari and Patrick Broswell.
Hello, my name is Ishaq Qatari. I'm the Vice President of the Brighton High School Climate Club and a rising senior. Today I'm here to speak about the importance of establishing a climate advisory board. Climate change is a pressing issue, with 62% of Americans believing that the government is not doing enough to combat climate change. I'm not trying to belittle the past actions of the county in order to combat climate change. However, climate change is not a problem with a simple solution. In order to make practical policy for our county, it is important to hear the opinions of experts. Being high school students, it would be foolish for us to formally dictate climate policy. Thus, a climate action board would not only facilitate discussion and encourage bipartisanship, but also create lasting policy. Thank you for your time.
I'm Patrick Braswell from Rochester Homeless Union. A couple years ago, I got put in a situation when I was put amongst a bunch of impoverished people in shelters and stuff, and I began to realize that they were there for a reason, that the system was actually a strategy to keep people impoverished in this city, and they was using the sanctions in order to do so. Petition the sanctions with a few people walking around on a daily basis getting signatures to probably change this bill. Everybody looked at us like we were stupid. Like, who are these people coming? I'm talking about the Rochester Homeless Union. Long story short, we went to the city to provide help, completely disregarded what we were saying. We even got stats from a Dr. Harry Murray because they wasn't going to listen to us, which ran up OTDA's stats, and they said their stats was wrong. So I decided we'd take it to the state. By taking it to the state, we now have sanctions reform bill passed. That's a great victory for our union. The home stability bill was neglected. We fought for the Cadillac to make it out a transitional housing unit. Developers come in and try to attempt to gentrify our city to push the poor out into the street, into the shelters. Said we were stupid about that. But if you look at the news in the next couple of days, you'll see we got a victory. And that $16 million lie that they put in the paper to keep the tail between our legs, we didn't buy it. Now I'm hearing about this green light issue with undocumented individuals that work in the fields. I can relate to this because I come from a middle-class family and they gave me an education. They taught me how to work. As a form of punishment, I was sent to work in the fields with a bunch of immigrants because I was not fitting up to my family's expectations and cherishing the things that they were giving me. I thought I was supposed to be given these things, but they showed me that you have to work hard in life to get things. These people are people too, I found out. I stayed in those fields and I worked really hard and I learned how to do hard work. And I stayed in those fields. I didn't even go back to run my dad's business like he planned. I made more money working in those fields, picking those apples, doing those watermelons, doing those tomatoes, cucumbers, cabbage. They opened the door for these individuals to be able to get transportation and drive themselves back into work, back and forth to work, to take care of their families. They come over here into this supposedly great America to provide a better life for themselves. I thought this was supposed to be the place. I've listened to them say that we can get this, but we're treated like nobody. We're this and we're that. We used to load them on the back of trucks because they didn't have vehicles to get back and forth to the field. I remember a truck turned over like 15 of them in Boca Raton, Florida. 13 of them died. We need to start working toward working for our people, love our people. Those people out there just like me and you. Our lives, we should have morals, standards, and values, but let's not place them too high. Let's not put ourselves above the next person. I hear about the health care bills, people not giving proper insurance and stuff. People die because of this. Each and every one of you in this room, I want you to know that if you need help, the Rochester Homeless Union here got your back. Give us a call. We can make changes.
This concludes the public forum.
At this time, we will recess the July 9th, 2019 meeting of the Monroe County Legislature and convene the Pure Waters Administrative Board of Rochester Pure Waters District. Mr. Clerk, please note the attendance and read the first item on the agenda.
PUAB Agenda Item Number 1, Referral 19-0164.
Moved by Legislator Bruce, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Legislator Baroff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a note that I'm discussing this now because this is actually the lead agency on this referral, so if we discuss it afterwards in the legislature meeting itself, it wouldn't be particularly pertinent because this is the decision making right now. So I do have a question for the administration regarding this particular referral, and that is the referral states that we're increasing the funding for this bill by $6 million, which is an increase of about 120%. Why is that the case? Through the chair, through the president.
Through the president, we're actually moving funding forward. We're not actually increasing the project costs. There was money that was programmed in later years. We're moving it into this year so that we can take advantage of, make projects eligible for state revolving funds as well as water quality construction grants.
Good. And just to save time, would that be a similar reason for referral 165 or 164?
Through the president, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
PUAB Agenda Item Number 2, Referral 19-0166.
Moved by Legislator Bruce, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries. We will now recess the Rochester Pure Waters District and adjourn the Pure Waters Administrative Board. The July 9th, 2019 meeting of the Legislature is reconvened. We will now proceed with the consideration of local laws. Will the clerk please read the first item on the agenda?
Item Number 1, Referral 19-0160.LL.
Second. Moved by Legislator Taylor, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. This is for introductory purposes only. Next item, please.
Item Number 2, Referral 19-0160.LL. Second.
Moved by Legislator Taylor, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. This is a motion to table. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item Number 3, Referral 19-0160.LL.
Moved by Legislator Taylor, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. This is to set a public hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. We will now proceed with the consideration of motions, resolutions, and notices. Will the clerk read the next item on the agenda, please?
Item Number 4, Referral 19-0120.
Moved by Legislator DeFlorio, seconded by Legislators Boyce, Brew, Terp, Hebert, Howland, Zale, and Delahanty. This is a motion to lift from the table. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item Number 5, Referral 19-0120.
Moved by Legislator DeFlorio, seconded by Legislators Boyce, Brew, Terp. No, wait a minute. Wrong one, right? Yeah, yes. Legislators Boyce, Brew, Terp, Hebert, Howland, Zale, and Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Item Number 6, Referral 19-0140.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by Legislator Delahanty, seconded by Legislator Draw. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item Number 7, Referral 19-0148.
Moved by Legislator Taylor, seconded by Legislator Brew. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item Number 8, Referral 19-0149.
Moved by Legislator DeFlorio, seconded by Legislator Boyce. This is for introductory purposes only. Next item, please.
Item Number 9, Referral 19-0149.
Moved by Legislator DeFlorio, seconded by Legislator Boyce. This is a motion to table. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item Number 10, Referral 19-0149.
Moved by Legislator DeFlorio, seconded by Legislator Boyce. This is to set a public hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 11, referral 19-0150.
Moved by legislator Boyce, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 12, referral 19-0151.
Moved by legislator Hebert, seconded by legislator Brew. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Legislator Baroff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration, first I'd like to say thank you for the response to my question regarding whether any intermunicipal agreement similar to this. And my question in regards to the answer, which was that there is one, and that is this the only one? Is this new referral contract similar to this other agreement or not? Through the Chair, President.
Through the President, the contract will be very similar in terms of structure. Again, they're related to similar elements for GIS purposes, but it will read essentially the same as the example that we provided to you.
Thank you. So my follow-up and final question is, through the President, since these are both dealing with the sharing of information and data, and since I know we share data on a regular basis of different nature with other municipalities around here, why is it that we just have these two agreements in place and not a multitude of others?
Through the President, we respond to requests from other municipalities as the technology evolves and as information becomes available, and this is really the mechanism that we can put into place that will allow us to share that information, effectively and and equitably for all municipalities.
Thank you. So, in summary, then, it's primarily because it's a response to other municipalities asking for this relationship through the President.
Through the President, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 13, referral 19-0152.
Moved by legislator Howland, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 14, referral 19-0152.BR.
Moved by legislator Howland, seconded by legislator Delahanty and legislator Lightfoot. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 15, referral 19-0153.
Moved by legislator Howland, seconded by legislator Delahanty and legislator Lightfoot. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Item number 16, referral 19-0154.
Moved by legislator Howland, seconded by legislator Boyce and legislator Lightfoot. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Item number 17, referral 19-0155.
Moved by legislator Zale, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Item number 18, referral 19-0156.
Moved by legislator Zale, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Legislator Cayley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize if this is a rehash of information that was given out at the committee meeting, but I could not attend. And I thank you for the information that did come from the administration. But I did have a couple questions. In first, through the President to the administration, since this is a new contract, was Villa of Hope the only respondent to this contract request?
Through the President, Meredith Smith, Counsel to the Commissioner of DHS, Villa of Hope was not the only respondent.
Could I ask then through the President the other respondents?
The other respondent was Rochester Regional Health, through the President.
Okay. And then through the President, in looking at the answers to the questions, I realized that this is not at the location of Villa of Hope, and that a location would be selected at some point in time that would be central to the county. Is that correct?
Through the president, yes.
Thank you. And then would this be a new build, or is this an existing arrangement?
Through the president, that has not yet been determined.
Thank you. Then, within the grant itself, through the president, are any of these funds earmarked for build-out or building or what have you? Let me back that one out. Will Villa of Hope be responsible for the building and its maintenance or its location? Bless you. Through the president.
Through the president, yes.
Yes. All right. So thank you. And then through the president, any of this fund, any part of this fund that's coming through the grant, would that be applicable to the maintenance of the building or location through the president? I don't even know if I said that.
Through the president, the contract may provide for some payments for rent, and it's possible that some maintenance might be covered under that.
Thank you. And then through the president, could I get information on that? Could we have information on that after, when the location is decided and such, that we be apprised of what the agreement actually turns out to be?
Through the president, yes.
Thank you. And since this is through the president from ages 18 and on, no, I don't want to ask that. What I'm concerned with is through the president, what the duration of services that are actually going to be administered through this. I realize it's a diversion program, but if people stop in, there's another question there. How long might they be given services through this particular program?
Through the president, individuals can come to the site as many times as they need, but the actual duration of any one visit would be expected to be short because they would be referred to other services.
Thank you. And then through the president, I'm assuming that if the initial referrals were given to the individual and the connections were made and the individual was not complying, that at a later date they might re-avail themselves of the services?
Through the president, that's possible, yes.
Thank you. And then through the president, should we expect to see, well, we should, a schedule of reporting back on the successes, numbers of individuals that come through the program?
Through the president, yes.
Thank you. And then to go along with the information through the president that I asked for before, when that agreement is made, it would be nice to have that down as well. And then finally, if the grant ends within the next year or is not renewed through the state, is the county committed to continuing the program?
Through the president, no.
Thank you. Just in last, through the president, I find the program is a good program. I used to work at the Villa of Hope, so I have confidence in the services that they can provide. And I would hope that if nothing happens, to the grant, but if it does, that the county find a way to fund it because it is an important program.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 19, referral 19-0157.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by legislator Delahanty, seconded by legislator Draw. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 20, referral 19-0158.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by legislator Delahanty, seconded by legislator Draw. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 21, referral 19-0159.
Moved by legislator Delahanty, seconded by legislator Draw. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Item number 22, referral 19-0161.
Moved by legislator Delahanty, seconded by legislator Draw. This is to adopt. Before we get started with discussion on this matter, I'd like to remind everyone that tonight we are discussing the authorization of a lawsuit, not the merits of the state law, which is already passed in Albany. I would also like to reiterate the process used at the Ways and Means Committee meeting. In order to facilitate an open and robust discussion on this matter, I'd like to first open the floor to any process questions. Once we are through with those questions, if there are any questions regarding the content of the litigation and legal strategy, I will entertain a motion into executive session. Now I'll open up the floor to discussion. Legislator Marionetti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration as to process, would someone from administration be able to just briefly explain to this body why this matter is here before the legislature for authorization?
Yes, through the President, Mike Davis, County Attorney. We're here because it is my opinion that this type of a lawsuit challenging a state law is something that should be authorized by the county legislature. As county attorney, I have authority under our charter to defend and prosecute lawsuits, but not to commence them. Generally, across the state, county legislatures authorize litigation. However, in charter counties such as Monroe County, the county executive has some broad authority to authorize litigation. And the cases that we typically bring involve recovering money for the county. The county executive, as the administrative head of county government, chief executive officer, and the chief budget officer, has by law been given authority to commence litigation, things that relate to those parts of her authority. It was my view that challenging a state law was beyond that, and that's why we're here.
Any further discussion? Legislator Moyle.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that this is a technical question. For you to the administration, do we know if this is authorized what the caption will read? Will it be the County of Monroe, or will it be Cheryl Donalfo, County Executive against the State of New York?
Through the President, we haven't determined every detail about what the lawsuit would look like. We have a draft of the complaint, but the designation of parties is yet to be determined. I would certainly think the County of Monroe would be the plaintiff.
I'm sorry, I think you might have trailed off. You think it's your opinion it would probably be the County of Monroe? Did I hear that correctly?
I said that, but we haven't finally determined who the parties would be, but I would be leaning that would be the County of Monroe would be the appropriate plaintiff.
Okay, thank you. And I think this might be for my next question is for the next part. Thank you.
Legislator Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, through you to the administration, the Erie County Clerk today filed a lawsuit in federal court. So my question is, if this law is already being challenged, why is it that Monroe County feels the need to file another separate lawsuit?
Through the President, every county in New York would be entitled to bring a lawsuit. Our lawsuit, I won't get into the merits of it, but it would not be identical to Erie County's.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, then there's some differences in the lawsuit, which is your reason for filing this lawsuit. Is that correct?
Through the President, I explained that there would be differences in the lawsuit, which would be one reason to do it, but I would say Monroe County could sue the matter on its own right.
Through you, Mr. President, the regulations for the green light law have not yet been in place, and they haven't come from the regulations haven't come out of Albany. So, through you, Mr. President, why is it that we're going ahead and suing now when we don't even know all of the rules and regulations associated with the law?
Through the President, the Subject of the lawsuit is something that needs to be addressed in executive session.
Mr. President, it was described to the Ways and Means Committee the reason for the lawsuit is much different than the attorney has indicated this afternoon. So my question is, why is it that we've changed course as to the reason for the lawsuit?
Mr. President, I move to go into executive session if we're going to get to the
But through you, Mr. President, I don't. It's not an issue of the lawsuit that would have to be discussed in executive session. I'm not sure why we would move to executive session if.
Do you have an opinion on that?
Through the President, I expect what the legislator is asking about is the reason we're here for the authorization for the lawsuit rather than the substance of the lawsuit. Is that the question?
That is correct.
So as I understand it, at Ways and Means, and as you probably know, I wasn't there, there was also an explanation that it was to avoid a possible conflict of interest between the county executive and the county clerk on whether or not there should be a lawsuit. And just to avoid that possible conflict of interest is an additional reason to have the legislature authorize it. Okay. But the fundamental reason existed before Ways and Means, and I wasn't there, and I want to make sure that everybody understood my opinion.
Through you then, Mr. President, is it fair to say that you'll be handling this case, as obviously there's some differences of opinion as to why the lawsuit was being filed at Ways and Means? It was something different than it is tonight. So my question is, will you be handling the case directly?
Through the President, as county attorney, I will oversee the litigation. It will be substantially handled by attorneys in our litigation division.
And through you, Mr. President, is there any way we could get an estimate as to what the cost of that is going to be to the taxpayers of Monroe County?
Through the President, it's difficult to say what amount of time or the cost would be associated with any particular case at the outset. But what I can say is there will be no additional staff necessary to handle the case. It will be handled in the ordinary course of the work of the law department. To put it into perspective, as an example, Mr. President, if one were the managing agent of a large shopping mall and you added, say, 3 new tenants, you would expect the manager to assume those responsibilities without the necessity of adding additional staff. Same thing here. Our attorneys can absorb this work without any additional staff.
All due respect, Mr. President, I happen to be in the shopping center business, so I know that when you add new tenants, there's certainly more associated costs. So if we're adding new lawsuits, it's hard to imagine that there wouldn't be additional costs associated with it. So all due respect, I think that the attorney is wrong to indicate that there's simply no additional costs associated with it. With that, I'll ask the remaining questions in executive session. Thank you, Mr. President.
Legislator Baroth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe these are all procedural. I don't understand the distinction between procedural and subjective, but I'll go along with the flow on this, with the understanding that if procedural questions come up again after we go into executive session, which I feel we may do, then I would ask those afterwards, if that's what works.
Whatever
okay.
You say.
Through the President to the administration, you mentioned that you already have a draft of the complaint. Did I understand that correctly through the Chair? President?
Through the President, yes.
About how many hours to date have been spent on that and related research through the President?
Through the President, I don't have exact numbers.
An approximation would do through the President.
Through the President, I'd be guessing, and as an attorney, I don't guess. I'm sure there's been some time spent by myself and some other attorneys.
Would we say more than an hour? I've not been given an answer yet. I've been told that he doesn't know the answer. I'm on an estimation that through the President.
I'm going to hold that point of order.
I appeal your ruling.
Okay, you're appealing the ruling of the President?
Correct.
We'll go to a roll call vote.
Second. John?
Second, okay. Roll call vote.
The yes sustains the rule of the President. Mr. Marinetti?
Yes.
Ms. Cayley? No. Mr. Alcoffer? Yes. Mr. Ansello? Yes. Mr. Baroth? No. Ms. Boyce? Yes. Mr. Brew? Yes. Mr. Delahanty.
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio. Mrs. Draw. Mr. Felder. Mr. Flagler Mitchell. Ms. Halstead. Mr. Hebert. Mr. Howland. Ms. Lamar. Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Mafucci. Mr. Michikay is excused. Mr. Morelli. Mr. Moyo. Mr. Rockow. Mr. Shepard. Ms. Taylor. Mr. Terp. Mr. Wilcox is excused. Mr. Wilt. Mr. Zale. President Carbone.
Yes.
1710, the rule of the president is sustained.
In the mysterious time frame between 0 and 1,000 hours that you spent working on this process, could you indicate, was there or was there not a review of pertinent case law? Did that occur through the president?
Through the president, could you repeat the question?
Yes. In the time frame between 0 and 1,000 hours that was spent working on this complaint, can you indicate if there was a review of pertinent case law during this process through the president?
Through the president, yes, there was legal research done.
Thank you. Through the president to the administration, how long did that legal research take?
Through the president, I'm not going to speculate on the time involved in any particular aspect of the work.
Oh, so you don't know through the president?
Point of order,
I'll uphold the point of order.
We're good. So through the president to the administration, during this review of case law, did you or anyone else doing this review discover any cases challenging the legality of law permitting undocumented immigrants to obtain a driver's license? Were there any other cases through the president?
President, we're getting into the merits of the legal basis of the lawsuit, which need to be discussed in executive session.
Through the president to the administration, is there anything at all about your legal research you can discuss right now?
Through the president, not about the substance of the lawsuit.
Okay. Well, that brings me to the actual referral that was presented to us as a matter of urgency before the Ways and Means Committee meeting, where you it was indicated that this is a necessary, quote, to challenge the lawfulness of the New York State Driver's License Access and Privacy Act. And my question is, if you're asking us to challenge the lawfulness, on what basis? Or is that too factual through the president?
Through the president, that relates to the substantive merits of the lawsuit, which is a subject for executive session.
Mm-hmm. Through the president, it was indicated that you can, repeatedly, I'm not asking the same question here, we can't figure out how much it's going to cost the county in terms of time. But we have had past examples of time and money spent on similar lawsuits, perhaps back in 2007, I believe it was. Do we have an estimate on how much time and money was spent during that legal fiasco?
President, could you repeat the question or just tell me, are you asking how much time was spent on the 2007 lawsuit?
And resources. Through the president, yes.
Through the president, I don't have any information about that.
I suspect it took more than an hour. Okay. I realize we're not going to get too far with this. I would like to say, however, that when we say, and it was said in Ways and Means, that this was not going to cost us anything, which is why we're kind of asking these questions, that's a laughable response from the administration. We all know time is money, and time spent on this comes from somewhere. And we also know this is going to be a heavily litigated case, at least until the election's over. And it's going to take a lot of time. And no matter what happens, it's going to be appealed. And there are 12 states that actually have similar legislation on the board right now, and the federal government has never challenged it. There have been no challenges to these laws. In fact, the only challenges to laws on existence regarding licenses for undocumented migrants is to defend the ability of undocumented migrants for having this form of identification that, in fact, protects members of the police and members of the public. So I think it's interesting that you can't come up with any response that you're willing to discuss in public as opposed to in private regarding the merits of this case, or even the basic research that goes into it. It doesn't have to be about the merits of the case. It could be about the basic tenets of why we're doing this, but not even that's being shared with the public. I'm disappointed. I will yield my time.
Legislator Felder.
What is the legal right for the county to sue the state, and in what instances is the county, ordinarily the county is not allowed to sue the state, so in what instances is the county allowed to actually go forward with the lawsuit?
Through the President, that relates to the legal basis of this particular lawsuit, and it's clear that there is a legal basis to bring this lawsuit, but what that is the substantive part of the case that we discuss in the executive session.
I'm going to say this and I'm going to sit down. I think it is a sham to sit here and say we're going to sue that, let me say, the Republicans want to sue the state of New York about granting driver's license undocumented immigrants, even though it's the county clerk's responsibility to deal with driver's license matters. And he says he'll uphold the law. And on top of that, to say we need to go into executive session to discuss the merits of the case, the basis of the case, and the chances of success of the case, when it's obvious from everything I've read and seen that the case is flimsy, it has very low chance of success, and very low legal basis for the lawsuit. And then we want to go on executive session and lock the media out, lock the public out of this discussion. They need to know exactly what's going on in here. They need to see exactly, this is not a personnel case. We're not talking about somebody's job or some lawsuit where we're defending. We're talking about what we're supposed to be doing on behalf of the taxpayers of the county of Monroe, and we want to lock them out of the deliberations so they can really see just how weak this is. And I think if we do that, I think it will show us to be very opaque in our dealings with the public.
Legislator Moyo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I've been hearing a lot about executive session. Do we plan to file this case under seal, or is it going to be a public document filed with the county clerk's office?
Through the President, lawsuits are filed as public documents. It would not be filed under seal.
So all this information, the case law that's going to be cited in the complaint, and will be public. Is that correct?
Through the President, yes.
Thank you. So I keep hearing about executive session. What would be the basis of executive session today? Through the President.
Through the President, there's two parts to that. First of all, under the open meetings law, when you're discussing litigation or contemplated litigation, you go into executive session. And the underlying reason for that is those discussions involve strategies and decisions are made, and those are to be made in executive session.
Thank you. May I ask a question? Well, no, I'll keep that. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Legislator Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration. Since we can't get no hours for how long our law department has been dealing with this, how many people out of the law department have been working on this litigation? Through you, Mr. President.
Through the President, did you ask about people working on this litigation outside of the law department? Is that the question?
No, the people inside the law department.
Through the President, I'm going to ask you to restate the question. I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Since we can't get no hours of how long you've been dealing with this litigation or trying to put it together, I'm asking how many people in the law department have been working on this actual litigation that you're getting ready to bring forth? Through you, Mr. President.
Okay, through the President, 3 including me.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Legislator Mafucci.
I would like to explain my vote, but I'm wondering if I should do that now, or are we going to go into executive session, or?
Yeah, why don't you just explain your vote?
Thank you. I rise to explain my vote. It'll be similar to some of the things I said in Ways and Means. First, I'd like to clear up some misinformation that's out there. The law is not a violation of federal law, as other states do the same thing. And it does not provide undocumented people with protections that are not afforded to United States citizens, as stated by our neighboring county clerk, although he has a right to say whatever he wants to say. In fact, while it may help undocumented drivers, all drivers are treated the same. It's not a violation of the 14th Amendment. Moving on to the referral, it's poorly written. It says specific legislative action is required to authorize the county executive or her designee to commence litigation to challenge the lawfulness of the Driver's License Access and Privacy Act. The law is legal, and the referral offers no evidence to the contrary. There's a leadership skill at play here. That's keeping the main thing the main thing. In this case, it's public safety. The state's undocumented person problem is a direct result of the federal government not doing its job. For years, Congress and now the current president have abrogated their responsibility to implement comprehensive immigration reform in a responsible and bipartisan way. There was actually an agreement in 2013. I won't go into the details of what happened. Their failure to do their job has left states and other communities with little choice but to take public safety issues into their own hands. New York State has done just that. Undocumented people are part of our community. They live here, work here, pay taxes here. They also drive here to get to their jobs, to take their children to the doctor, to live their daily lives as productive members of our society and community. It makes good sense to ensure they're driving safely and are insured for the protection of everyone. Politicizing public safety for no good reason is irresponsible and can only be described as purposeful distraction from the real issues facing Monroe County while adopting the politics of division. I will summarize with 3 quotes. One from Dr. Seuss, Aesop, and my former business manager where I was superintendent of schools. A person is a person, no matter how small. No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted. And let your conscience be your guide. Demeaning and marginalizing people is a trait of the age of Trump. It's something I cannot support. I will be voting no. Thank you.
Legislator Marionetti.
I'll renew my motion, Mr. President, to go into executive session.
Second. Could you say that again?
Yes, Mr. President, I renew my motion to go into executive session.
A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Let's go to roll call vote.
Mr. Marionetti? Yes. Ms. Cayley? No. Mr. Alcoffer? Yes. Mr. Ansello? Yes. Mr. Baroff? No. Ms. Boyce? Yes. Mr. Brew? Yes. Mr. Delahanty?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio? Yes. Mrs. Draw? Yes. Mr. Felder? No. Mr. Flagler Mitchell? No. Ms. Halstead? Yes. Mr. Hebert? Yes. Mr. Howland? Yes. Ms. Lamar? No. Mr. Lightfoot? No. Mr. Mafucci? No. Mr. Michikay is excused. Mr. Morelli? No. Mr. Moyo? No. Mr. Rockow? Yes. Mr. Shepard? No. Ms. Taylor? Yes. Mr. Terp? Yes. Mr. Wilcox is excused. Mr. Wilt? Yes. Mr. Zale? Yes. President Carbone?
Yes.
1710, motion to enter executive session passes.
Okay, we're going to go back to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, let's go to a roll call vote.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I'd like to, coming out of executive session, I'd like to note for the record that I'm voting against filing this lawsuit or giving permission to the county executive to file this lawsuit. Based on the information and not to disclose anything, I don't know that we'll be successful. I think it might be a waste of county resources. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, let's go to a roll call vote.
Mr. Marionetti.
Yes.
Ms. Cayley. No. Mr. Alcoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Ansello. Yes. Mr. Baroff. No. Ms. Boyce. Yes. Mr. Brew. Yes. Mr. Delahanty.
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio. Yes. Mrs. Draw.
Yes.
Mr. Felder.
No.
Mr. Flagler-Mitchell.
No.
Ms. Halstead.
Yes.
Mr. Hebert.
Yes.
Mr. Howland.
Yes.
Ms. Lamar. No. Mr. Lightfoot.
No.
Mr. Mafucci.
No.
Mr. Michikay is excused. Mr. Morelli.
No.
Mr. Moyo. Mr. Moyo.
No.
Mr. Rockow.
Yes.
Mr. Shepard.
No.
Ms. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Terp.
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox is excused. Mr. Wilt.
Yes.
Mr. Zale.
Yes.
President Carbone.
Yes.
17 to 10, motion passes.
I'll proceed to the matters of urgency.
Item number 23, referral 19-0162.
Moved by legislator Terp, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is for introductory purposes only. Next item.
Item number 24, referral 19-0162.
Moved by legislator Terp, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is a motion to table. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 25, referral 19-0162.
Moved by legislator Terp, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is to set a public hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 26, referral 19-0163.
Moved by legislator Bruce, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is for introductory purposes only. Next item, please.
Item number 27, referral 19-0163.
Moved by legislator Bruce, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is a motion to table. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 28, referral 19-0163.
Moved by legislator Bruce, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is to set a public hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 29, referral 19-0165.
Moved by legislator Bruce, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is for introductory purposes only. Next item, please.
Item number 30, referral 19-0165.
Moved by legislator Bruce, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is a motion to table. All in favor? Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 31, referral 19-0165.
Moved by legislator Bruce, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is to set a public hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 32, referral 19-0167.
Moved by legislator Delahanty, seconded by legislator Draw. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. There is no unfinished business. Legislator Marionetti.
Mr. President, we stand adjourned until 6 p.m. Tuesday, August 13th, 2019.
Thank you.